Well, not a single hardware store in my town had 1/2 inch 13 square nuts, which I need to complete a project out here in the shop. Let's go out there and I'll show you what these go on, and whether or not we're going to fix it, I don't know yet. Probably just going to do an engine swap. I wasn't exactly sure what size bolt I needed, so I got 3 and a 4-inch, but I think what I've got here will work. So I found this old mower on the side of the road. It's an old magnesium or aluminum deck made by Sensation, and these, from what I understand, were some pretty deadgum decent mowers back in the day, in the late 70s, early 80s. The problem with this one is it don't have any hardware or any bolts or wheels at all. And as you can tell, I need those square nuts to go right there so that I can mount maybe some wheels on here. Now, from what I've read, 8-inch goes on the front and 10-inch on the back. However, let's get this thing on the bench and let me show you why this engine is not going to be worth repairing. What's happened is somebody's been into this thing, and where the gas tank mounts, they have broken out the engine block. As you can tell, that thing's been broke for a while. I, in all my experience, have never figured out a way to repair that. You might be able to go on the back side of it and put a nut and a washer, but I don't know. We might try it. Back here in the back also, the bracket that holds to the head is also broken. My plan is to just repower this. I've got a new old stock Predator motor that I'm thinking about putting on this thing. I'd love to get this thing running. All right, so the problem that I'm gonna have when I mount these wheels, now I got these at the Harbor Freight, is that the original wheels had like another inch offset, and they had ball bearings in there. What I'm gonna have to do is make this bolt work by either lengthening the threads a little bit, or I'm gonna have to put some spacer in between the wheel and the mower, like that, so that whenever it bolts up, it's not running on the threads of the bolt. Now, when I put this square this square nut in here, we're gonna have some wheel slop. So when we go on the backside to put our attaching nut, let's just get this thing mocked up and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So what I need to be able to do is take up that much slack. I would like to just put a spacer in here, or maybe some 1/2-inch washers in between the square nut and the wheel. Maybe a couple on this side and a couple on this side, just as thrust washers, just to keep it from being so much slop. If I go down one bolt size, then I don't have enough threads to make my connection from the mower to go through to put the nut on the back side. So this is the bolt that I'm gonna have to work with. What would be nice is if I actually had the original wheels that came off of this thing. Now, they sell them in rotary. It's the same as a Bobcat wheel, but they're $50 a piece, and I am not going to put that kind of money into this mower that I literally just found on the side of the road. So we're going to get this thing going as cheap as possible. These wheels from Harbor Freight were literally $6, and they're solid and they're heavy duty. There's the part number if you want to get you some. Right there, 6-inch or 8-inch PVC over vinyl. But I'm gonna have to go to the hardware store again and get some fender washers. But while I'm gone, I'm gonna go ahead and get this mower flipped onto its side. We're gonna see what's under here and see what it would take to do an engine swap. Shouldn't be that much entailed. It's just 3 bolts hold this motor on. Kind of like that crank video I did the other day. Just real super simple. Pretty primitive under here. As you can tell, it's got the lifting wings, and they literally, from the factory, just weld them on. But we need to get this blade off because it looks like it might be a little bit bent, and I doubt that there is a blade in this country. We may have to just put a 21-inch MTD blade or something on it and get rid of all this stump guard or whatever they call it. We've got a couple old mowers out here we could rob a blade adapter and a blade off of, as long as it's 21-inch. Let's see if we can't zip this off of here. That was easy. Huh. Actually has a crank protector on there. Now getting this blade adapter might be a challenge, but we're going to just try to do it here. Got a 2-jawed puller. Not a problem. So here's my new old stock engine that's just been sitting on the shelf. I was going to do a different project with. Just want to make sure that this blade adapter will fit this crank, and it does. They designed these Predator engines to replace these 3.5 horsepower Briggs, so it should be pretty much a direct swap here. I hope that we don't have to do too much as far as drilling holes in the deck or nothing like that. I hope we don't have to do too much of that. I do believe that this one and this one and this one, one of these 3 are the ones that we're going to use to mount the engine to the deck. And crank length is important. If you don't want it too long, because you're going to be scalping your yard. If it's too short, it ain't going to be cutting right. So far we're good. I think this adapter is blown out because it's supposed to have 2 pins here and here. All right, start taking off the nuts and bolts. Should be able to remove the engine now and this crank protector. Oh, I'm gonna have to take the Woodruff key out of there first. Best way I've ever found to get these keys out is a pair of side cutters. Let's get all this junk out of here. Man. Okay, so our crank length on the new old stock Predator motor is about a ½ an inch longer than our original. How can we combat this? Well, you can either buy a ½ inch shorter blade adapter, which I don't think they make. You can either lop this crank off, or you can put a ½ inch spacers underneath the deck. If you remember, back in the day, Murray used to have a plastic ring that went around the engine that mounted it to the deck. I'm probably just going to put a spacer in between the engine and the deck. I got no qualms with that. Another thing that's going to foul us up is that these newer engines are built to, you know, the ANSI standards, and this one's got a blade brake and a kill switch. We're going to have to figure out a way to either put one on there, or I'm going to have me some sort of rod that I can put through here and tie it off, and just put a electric switch on the handlebar to kill the motor. It's got provisions for a throttle, but we'll probably just run it wide open, so whenever it cranks, it'll just go to WOT, which is okay by me. The more that I look at this old engine, it actually sits down past flush where the mounting is. The sump sits about a ½ an inch down through the deck. So that means that the crankshaft may be a little longer on the Predator motor, but that once you get it mounted, it's going to be, you know, the right length. So I'm glad we don't have to shorten or anything or any of that crap, because that's a pain in the butt to do. The sump on this one will sit flat flush with the bottom of the deck, and that's about a ½ an inch worth of standoff right there. So what we're going to have to do though is where these mounting lugs are, going to have to tap them to, I think it's 3/8 or maybe, I think 5/16. No, I don't think I'm going to have to tap anything. I should be able to reuse the original engine hardware here. So if I slide the factory crank protector down on here, you can tell all the bolt holes are going to line up perfectly. And our crank, well, this will actually be a little bit further up this way because of the deck. Our crank will be the perfect length. Well, I scrounged around and found what I had for some washers, and I just don't have enough to do both sides. So definitely going to have to run to the hardware store, and I'm probably going to get new bolts to mount the engine with, because these old ones I don't believe are going to be quite long enough. By the time you go through the deck, let's see here, that deck is pretty thick, and if that's all we got left, I may not have enough room to put the nut. May do a test fit or just get a little bit longer screw. I think we'll be good. Ran into one more modification, as the old engine had a Woodruff key for the blade adapter. This will work as long as we have a piece of 3/16 square stock that I can put right here for the crank. Oh, my workbench is giving me anxiety. Got to get it cleaned off. All right, so I'm back from the hardware store, and this is what I come up with. I'm going to put double washers on the outside, and I'm going to put 4 washers on the inside, and that would be the same distance as the factory wheels that have the ball bearings in it. As you can tell, we hardly have any back and forth play now. So once we get this mounted, it's going to be solid as a rock. Make sure your mounting holes and bosses are not got nothing underneath it, so it definitely is going to mount square and even. All right, now we can go ahead and put the motor on. All right, we got the motor set on there. I got one bolt in. We're gonna flip it onto its side and see if we can't get all the rest of those bolts started. And I'm gonna go ahead and put this crankshaft stiffener protector back on also. Got the mower flipped upside down. If that'll stay right there and not move on me. We'll slide this down over it. All right, I got this one started. I got the nut underneath. Probably going to have to wiggle the motor just a little bit to get that to drop down in there. One thing that I did run across is to mount this engine in the stock location without drilling holes. The engine's going to have to be mounted backwards. The mounting for the front bolt is in the front of this engine, right here. And the two rears, it's not really an issue, it's just more of a inconvenience when starting it. You'll have to start it from the rear. Might be able to turn that starter around, I don't know yet. So I got my front wheel issue solved. That's solid as a rock right there. That ain't going nowhere. If you need to change the height, you just remove the nut, pull the wheel out and move it down. I think there's like 6 slots that you can adjust it up and down. It looks pretty good. The one mounting bolt over here ended up being a 3/8 fine thread. It doesn't have a through. It doesn't go all the way through. It actually screws into the sump there, and it was already threaded for fine thread. It's like they already knew people were going to repower this thing with standard bolts. But here's why I wanted to get longer bolts for this, is because now I'm not going to have, it's not, if I put these nylon locking nuts on here, it's barely going to catch those nylock threads, but that's all right. All right, so we've got the motor mounted. So let's flip it over and see what we need to do to reinstall the blade hub. Now this crank was awfully rusty from just sitting on the shelf. And without a keyway in there, I just want to make sure that we're not going to rub up against anything. And it looks like we're good. Going all the way down. I'm going to tap a new keyway in. And we should just be able to slide this up there without any problems. I don't know how hard that's going to be to tap up on there. She went right up on there. Perfect. I went ahead and bought a new blade for it. It's a universal blade from Arnold, 21 inch. It's gonna come with a couple of arbors, couple of adapters, and we'll get it put on here. That ain't gonna work. It's hitting. I guess a 21-inch blade 30 years ago ain't the same as today. Oh no, what do we do now? I guess you could put a 20 on it and be all right. So I mounted the old blade back on there, and boy, does that thing just barely miss that deck. I'm gonna try to straighten this blade. I don't like doing it, but I will, if that's all I can get. She's starting to come together like a lawnmower. Hey, check this out. Even though the engine's mounted backwards, it even says, step here to start. So that means that the starter rope's in the proper location. Let's, we'll get some oil in it and some gas and see if she'll bust off. I bet this motor's at least 4 years old. Never been started. I'm actually gonna leave this off. It's been tightened down so many times, you can see it's been whooped out and it's kind of pushed up there in the middle. That's not gonna get the blade tight or keep tight. I'm just gonna leave it off. Alrighty guys, let's give this thing a prime. This does not, it's chokeless. It's just got a primer bulb on the front of it up here. Couple, 3 times. Definitely gonna rig me up some kind of handle, maybe like a squeeze handle from a tiller or something might work. I don't know. Either that or just do away with the blade brake and just put me a toggle switch right here. But that just means more electrical and more work. She runs good, guys. I can't wait to use it. I'll make another video soon of it getting used. As you can tell, it is a rear discharge, and it's supposed to have a grass bag, but it says that it can be used as is with the deflector. We'll see how bad it blows the grass all over you. I'm not real sure how that's gonna work, but hey, got that little Predator engine swap done and runs great. If this content helped you out, and I know it did on this video, give me a thumbs up and smash that subscribe button. And while you're there doing that, go ahead and click that bell to get all my new videos. Y'all have a good rest of your weekend. Mower Medic 1.